Hi, I'm Jordan Mackey, and this is my timeline of special education PowerPoint slide. So, for this assignment, I definitely had a hard time figuring out what to put on my PowerPoint because there's so much information and there's so many turning points that we've had to get us where we are. With different acts and laws that help students with disabilities and their families. So these are just some of the bigger main concepts of the timeline of special education. So special education programs, they were around a little bit in the 19th century, slowly increased in the 20th century. By the 1940s is when it started becoming a bigger deal and it became more important. However, even then, good programs and programs in general weren't easily accessible or weren't accessible at all for a lot of families. Um, a lot of the information that I got was from the Rights Law website that was posted in our module for this assignment, and I thought that it did a really good job of explaining the different acts and laws and the progression of special education programs and all of that we have gotten thus far. So a lot of the information I took away from that article. I thought it was really great. Um, Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954 was a huge turning point because it was a lawsuit that was history making. And after that happened, a lot of parents or more parents of children with disabilities brought lawsuits against their school districts in order to help give their children equal rights and the rights that they deserved. So once the Brown versus Board of Education happened, a lot more families of children with disabilities felt like they could step up and they could, find ways to represent their children. The ESEA is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. This was 1965. This act helped make sure that disadvantaged students receive a quality education. Again, this is making sure that children with disabilities are still receiving a quality education. They aren't getting gypped in that sense, and that this encourages states to develop programs for individuals with disabilities. So this is making sure that children with disabilities are receiving the education they deserve, and they're starting to fund programs and come up with programs that are especially designed for children with disabilities. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is a huge part of the timeline of special education. This is the anti-discrimination statute that makes sure that the needs of students with disabilities are met. So this is making sure that their needs are met within the classrooms. This is for the disabilities can either be mental or physical impairments. There's certain requirements that students need to meet in order to that they had to meet in order to qualify, but it's for mental and physical impairments, and it's just making sure that their needs in the classrooms and at the school are being met. 1975 is the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. It was called the Public Law 94, 192. This is huge. This is when accountability was first brought into the mix. This is making sure that agencies at both the state and local level are being held accountable for providing the educational services for handicapped children. This is also huge because this is when the procedural safeguards started to come into play, which now is a huge aspect of families that have students and children that have disabilities. It protects the rights of the children and of the families. We talked a lot about that in the last module about the rights and why they're so important. A big one is the No Child Left Behind Act that was first put out in 2001. That was the act that kind of closed the achievement gap within schools and within public schools. And this is making sure that all children are getting the fair, equal educational opportunities, and that programs are available for children with disabilities so that they're still getting the same opportunities that every other student has. The four main aspects of this were accountability, which I talked about it was huge. The flexibility, research-based education, just making sure that these programs are being made in ways that are going to be beneficial based on the research that they've found. This is also parent options come into play, that parents are given options and have wider variety of options that they can choose from within the schools. And the No Child Left Behind Act, I think, had very good intentions. However, we can see that it didn't necessarily work out the way that it might have meant to. The idea of 2004 was the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act. This increased the focus of accountability, which I think is huge. There needs to be state and federal levels of accountability being upheld, making sure that the children's needs are met. This is, again, it protects the child and parents' rights, which is huge, which we've talked about in the discussion board and everything. This, the most important thing I think on this slide is that it prepares the child for the future, whether it means further education, being independent, living alone. This just helps make sure that the children's needs are met in order for them to succeed in life. Every aspect of it, again, whether it be further education, whether it be living alone, whatever the case may be, it just prepares the children for the future, which is huge. So those were, again, just the major components, major events that happened throughout the timeline of special education. There's so much more that goes into this. But I mean, yeah, there's just so much more that it's hard to condense it all. So thank you.